supposed to talk about your sexual orientation. That's probably getting better in families now because everybody knows about this issue and therefore people are more likely to talk about it. But I would suspect that most people, when they grow up, they're embarrassed, some are ashamed, and they don't want to talk about it. It takes a long time to get around to it. And then horrible things happen. Believe me, I get emails about this. People who are thrown out of home. Can you believe it? Still thrown out of home. Often very religious people. Often people who believe a man and woman should not shelter, abomination surely shall be put to death. I mean, if you are a literalist and a formalist and you believe that it's all there in the words, just read the words. There are lawyers like this, and there certainly are religious people, then you've got a problem on your hands. And so a few people started, we still haven't got the artists to put sex into the art galleries, but we started to get people to put sex on the agenda of science. And so in the 19th century, a great German psychologist, Richard Kraft-Ebing, and others, Sigmund Freud, began to study and extrapolate from many cases, and they came to a conclusion there are quite a lot of people who are GLBT. And then along came Alfred Kinsey. Now Kinsey was the world's greatest expert on bees. It seems a bit weird now, but he was a big expert on gall wasps. Can you imagine spending your whole life collecting gall wasps and classifying them? That's what Alfred Kinsey did. His whole life he was a professor of zoology, as we used to call it. When I started at Sydney University, we had a faculty of zoology. And that's what Alfred Kinsey did. And then suddenly, he decided he would classify human beings. And so he turned to examining human sexuality. And he discovered over there at Bloomington, Indiana, at Indiana University, that most people are up that end of his spectrum, and they're straight, they're heterosexual. A small number are exclusively lifelong homosexual. He estimated that was about 4% of the sample. And that's where I am. And then there's a group who were to about up to 30% in his cohort, who at some time in their life have a sexual experience to orgasm, and yet they don't end up gay. They sort of gravitate back either to a bisexual life or to an exclusively heterosexual life. So he had this scale, 1 to 6, and most people are down that end of the scale. I'm down at that end. There's a group in between, according to Kinsey, who have this experience in their life. And if you look at it objectively, it's not a big deal. But go back to Leviticus, and there are people who say it's a very big deal. And when I was growing up, the criminal law said it was a super big deal. And if you did it, if you did anything about your sexuality, then you, and you were caught, you will be prosecuted. It was no defence that you did it with consent. There was no defence that it was between adults. It would be no defence that it was in private. It was a crime per se. And that was the law. So that's what I grew up. So I had this big burden on my head. And I couldn't talk to my dad, I couldn't talk to my mum, I couldn't talk to my brothers and my sister, I couldn't talk to my grandmother, couldn't talk to anybody. It was horrible. Do you know my solution to this? My solution was to become the greatest student politician of all time. I became the president of the SRC, the president of the union, the fellow of the Senate representing the undergraduates. I was the king of the university committees. I was showing leadership. But never did I talk about this issue. Never did I give leadership on this issue. This was the silent, non-spoken issue, which I hope would somehow go away, but it doesn't go away. Human sexuality is a very strong drive